Hello and welcome to the CircuitPython community meeting for Monday, May 4th, 2020. This is a weekly meeting we have to get the CircuitPython community together and hear about all the things that everyone's doing. Everyone is welcome to join. You can join by joining the Adafruit Discord server. You can do that by going to the URL adafru.it/discord. That will drop you in. We're in the text channel all week, and we're in the voice channel on Mondays when we have this meeting. This meeting is normally at 8 a.m. 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern on the Discord and the voice channel. If it's a U.S. holiday, we tend to push it back a week. So we do have a calendar available in the notes repo that you could subscribe to know ahead of time when we do push it to a different day. We do also try to notify the role CircuitPythonistas on Discord. So if you want to get notified of that, let us know, and you'll get pinged when we push notes documents and when we announce if the meetings are at a different time. That'll also make your name purple, which is cool. This meeting, like I said, everyone is welcome to join. It's done in 5 parts. We start with a community news section, which is a preview of the newsletter that is released on Tuesday mornings. It's got kind of an overview of projects and announcements that are related to CircuitPython that we've seen kind of around the web. And Anne deserves all the credit for that, finding all that stuff. After community news, we have State of CircuitPython Libraries in Blinka, which is a general kind of overview and statistics view of the health of the project and its many pieces. So we'll go over that, and it'll be kind of a numbers game, but it's interesting to see how those numbers evolve, and also consider what numbers are important to us. In particular, we like to highlight like how many people are involved. So that's the second section. The third section we do is Hug Reports, which is a chance for us, each of us, to say thank you to folks for the work that they've been doing since we've had a chance to do it previously. It's both good for basically giving people the credit and the thanks that they deserve, but also as a way for us to know or reinforce the things that we value as a community to get together. And that's done as a round robin where I will start, and then we'll count, or I will kind of call on people in the voice channel in alphabetical order. If you're unable to make the meeting or don't choose to speak during the meeting, you can mark yourself or let us know that you're lurking, and we'll skip over you, or text only. If you have notes in the doc, I will read those off in your place. And I should also say that the meeting is being recorded, so I'm recording it using the Open Broadcast Studio, and it does get posted to the Adafruit YouTube channel as well, which is youtube.com/Adafruit. So if you want to hear our back catalog, we started this in 2017, I think, which is kind of wild, but it's you can check it out and see how things are evolving since then if you're curious. So the fourth section we have is status updates, and this is done as a round robin as well. But this is just a chance for us to say a brief minute or two about what you've been working on and what you're planning on doing in the coming week. It's a great way to give tips and tricks if somebody's starting to work on something that you've maybe looked into before. It's a good chance to say like, oh, hey, make sure you look at this or that. And Catney confirms it was 2017 when we started, which is amazing. It's just been going so well, which is great. So that's status updates done as a round robin. Again, let us know if you're lurking, and if you're just text only, please make sure your text notes are in the doc. Otherwise, I'll just treat you as lurking. After that, we had the final section, which is In the Weeds, which is a chance to have any sort of longer form discussions or pose questions to folks within our community. We have 2 topics already, but we're totally happy to have more topics. If you have topics, please drop them in the notes doc in the Weeds section with your username and kind of a summary of what you want to talk about, and then we'll just basically call on you to talk about to talk about the topic you want to talk about. I think I said talk a lot there. Anyway, that's how the meeting goes. and I will move on to the next section. Oh, I should lastly say that if I have a brain fart, it's because I'm taking time codes. When we post the recording, we include the note stock along with time codes so that people can skip around in the video to the portions that they are interested in. And with that, I'll take a time code and realize that my intro was really long and get going. So first off, the Hack Chat this week on Wednesday at noon Pacific is with Lamore and I. We're talking about the ESP32S2, which is an exciting chip from Espressif. I've been, as you may have seen, I've been streaming about getting that on, getting CircuitPython on the S2. So that will happen Wednesday at noon. We'd love for you to drop in. And that Hackaday IO event is a way to get into the project chat there. Next up, time code 5.3.0 was released thanks to Jeff. So check that out. And oh yeah, it's the wrong link. I pulled the link from the draft newsletter. So go please change it there so that it gets updated. Yeah, 5.3 is stable, which is awesome. We've been really cooking on keeping ourselves stable, which is a really good thing. So thanks to Jeff for that. Geek Guy, if you're having trouble putting your notes in the notes stock, feel free to just put them in the chat and we'll copy them there for you. That's not a problem. Okay. Next up for community news, we have an MQTT-based CircuitPython library for Azure IoT. I think this was a collaboration between Jim Bennett and Brent, so thanks to those two folks for that. Really nice to see Microsoft embracing CircuitPython as a way to integrate with their stuff, so that's super cool. And in the IoT vein, the Iot Monthly Newsletter was released on the 1st, so check out the link there, and thanks to Jeff for posting all the links. I really appreciate it. Check that out if you want to know everything that's going on with IoT and Adafruit. Next, we have the Melbourne Micropython Meetup is usually an in-person meetup in Melbourne, Australia, where Damien goes and some of the folks closest to Damien. It's always really interesting. It's run by Matt Trentini, who does really good kind of news roundup of all the new boards and what's happening in CircuitPython and stuff for that group there, which is really neat. And I love watching the videos from the real thing. But because of COVID-19, they're now virtual. And so Matt did a news roundup that is almost an hour long, but has lots of different interesting things in it. So I recommend checking that out. And there is a shout out to both Adafruit and myself in there, so maybe I'm a little biased. The quote says, this issue has a shout out to Adafruit and Scott on CircuitPython. Quote, especially loving the inspiring way that you folks are running the business in such a difficult time. Stay safe and keep up the amazing work. So give that a view, make sure to thumbs up, and I'd suggest subscribing to Matt's YouTube channel and taking a look back. It's always a great way to get a pulse on things there. Okay. MIT C-Sale posts that Springer just made 400 plus textbooks free to download, including CS books on Python, deep learning, data science, and AI. It's great timing. So if you're looking for some programming books in general or Python specific, check out the links there. Next, I believe this is from Jason. The Evo M51 module is a feather-sized board featuring both the microchip SAMD51 microcontroller and a Max 10 FPGA, which I believe is an Intel chip. The board is designed to support CircuitPython and is also programmable with the Arduino IDE. There's links to both the YouTube channel about it and the Olorium technology page for it. Okay. More updates for Adafruit has always been an open source hardware company, predating the Open Source Hardware Association certification process. And now that we have a bunch more time and the power of Dylan, our intern, we've begun submitting all of the hardware to OSHWA for certification as open source. And the newsletter will will include highlights for the new boards that have been officially certified as open source. And we're certainly the top company for open source hardware that has been certified at this point, which is exciting, along with, I believe, a pretty significant backlog, which is exciting to see Adafruit throw their weight behind that certification process. And thanks for Dylan and Catney for running that. And lastly, a reminder, CircuitPython is sponsored by Adafruit Industries, which continues to run with 100% of employees being paid and continuing to work. I'm a contractor as well, so all of us on CircuitPython are actually contractors, and we're still being paid as well, which is great. The employees in Manhattan are mostly working remote, but they do have a few folks inside or at HQ who are doing PPE related stuff. So thanks to those folks for getting out and doing things to support the fight against COVID-19, particularly within New York, which has been hit really hard. If you want to support Adafruit, we suggest buying Adafruit products through DigiKey. They're still shipping stuff. I got an order a couple of weeks ago. It's comes nice and quick. So if you want to support us, that's one way to do it. The other way is by buying gift certificates, which never expire, or subscribing to Adafruit IO, which is a nice privacy-friendly IoT service. Okay, and with that, let's move on to the state of CircuitPython libraries and Blinka. As I said earlier, this is kind of a statistical, hopefully objective overview of the health of the project. I'll talk overall and then the core, and then hand it off to Catney for the libraries. Overall, 23 pull requests merged from 16 different authors, which is awesome. We had 11 reviewers as well. So new authors that I don't recognize are Biffo Bear, Foamy Guy, Dunkman 00. I think I talked about Joe Bacalor. Jim Bob Bennett is relatively new. Geek Guy, SP Cool, Catney Higher Effect. So those last two are not new, but they're on here as well. And 11 reviewers, new reviewers. Foamy Guy, I think, is relatively new, but most of those folks are normal as well. So thank you to all of our authors and reviewers. Again, we're always looking for reviewers because they are the people that allow authors to get their code checked in. So if you want to help out with that, please let us know, and we'll get you going. I think we do need to loosen the statistics notion of what a reviewer is, to probably include all comments on a PR rather than the official reviewers, because that is the great way to start, is find a PR and just comment on it and say, hey, it works for me. I tried it. Issues wise, we had 39 closed issues by 13 people and 13 opened by 13 people. So we're net down 26 issues, which is awesome. And I think Catney will have more info on that because I think it's largely due to her. Overall, 5.3 is stable, and I expect 5.3 to be kind of our stable release for a little while. Lower power was checked in to master, which will likely make it a bit more unstable. So expect to see an unstable release for 5.4 this week, and potentially multiple unstable releases or pre-releases before that goes stable as well. On the library side, Catney's been doing a lot of housekeeping, which is awesome because those are the things that, like, back catalog on issues and pending PRs is a great way to take a look at an open source project and understand the health of the project. The obviously lower numbers are better, assuming that you're processing things coming in as well. So yeah, kudos to Catney for keeping all of those repos healthy and up to date. On the Blinka side, I just continue to see lots of people using Blinka, so lots of good things there, and we'll hear more from Melissa shortly. Okay, on the core side, we had 6 pull requests merged from 5 different authors and 5 reviewers. So thanks to those folks. New folks, Joe Bacalor and SP Cool, are new authors. We have 17 open pull requests. Is one of the larger things, but the vast majority of the pull requests are open just a few days, like under a week, which is great. I think this in general we're seeing more people involved as some folks have more time. Nobody's commuting at this point, so that gives everybody a bit more time back. Issues wise, we had 4 closed issues by 4 people and 4 opened by 4 people for net of 0 new issues, with a total of 284 open issues with a link in the notes. We have 6 active milestones and 15 issues are not assigned a milestone, so one of us should take a look at those just to we use kind of like not assigned a milestone as a metric for things that we haven't really looked at, so we should probably get that number down. And with that, let's kick it over to Catney for libraries.
Thanks, Scott. So this week we had 15 pull requests merged by 11 authors and 9 reviewers. And the oldest were 81 days, 80 days, and 68 days. And the youngest were 0 to 1 days, which is good. Leaving us with 26 open pull requests, which is great. That number seems to be going down, which is ideal.
That's amazing.
Obviously, yeah. There are new ones being opened, but we've been putting a lot of effort into trying to get through what has been sitting around. There were 29 issues closed by 9 people and 7 opened by 7 people, leaving 157 open issues. All of this information is available on circuitpython.org/contributing. And if you are interested in contributing, you should definitely check out that link. There are 3 sections there. One is library infrastructure issues, which shows you general stuff going on with library standards and ensuring that all the libraries are up to standards. There are open issues, which displays all of the open issues across all the libraries in one place, and open PRs, which is the same thing except with PRs. And there are ways to sort by label of the issues. So if you are new to things and you want to get started, you can search for good first issue and possibly find something that works for you. In terms of library updates, we had 1 new library, the BLE Berrymed Pulse Oximeter Library, and a number of updated libraries, which I will not read off, though the list is not crazy this week. One exciting one is PyPixelBuff, which we have been waiting on for a very long time. So it's very good to see that that finally is released, and I know that we can talk about that during status updates. But that was a good one. Exciting to see that. And that's where we are with the libraries.
Awesome. Thank you, Catney. Next up, we have Melissa for Blinka update.
Hello. So for Blinka, which is our CircuitPython library compatibility layer for single board computers such as the Raspberry Pi, we had 2 pull requests merged by 1 author and 2 reviewers. There's one open pull request, which is actually 0 because I just merged it about 10 minutes ago. And there are 6 closed issues by 2 people and 2 open by 2 people, leaving a net total of 27 open issues. And there have been 2,174 PyPI downloads in the last week. And we are currently supporting 46 boards. So we're almost to 50 on that.
Nice.
Yeah.
People are using it, though. Yeah.
Yeah, I have another one to add here, like this week, probably.
Great. Awesome. Thanks, Melissa. All right. Next up, we have Hug Reports. Hug Reports, as I said earlier, is a chance for you to say thank you for folks for the work that they've been doing. This is a community and a community meeting, and it's important that there's so many of us and we all have different perspectives on it. So we do this as a round robin, so everyone has a chance to say thank you from their different perspective, and hopefully everyone who's done something awesome does get a Hug report or 2. And again, if you're lurking or text only, please make sure that the notes doc says so, because I'll be going through here And if you're not able to make the meeting at all, you're always welcome to drop them in the notes doc as well, and I'll read them off. So I'll just go alphabetically and start with myself. Okay. First and foremost, I wanted to say thank you to Zobs for leading the way on the NRF 52833, which, for those of you who don't know, is a basically cut down version of the 840. Happy to see a PR for the dev kit, and also looks like the USB troubles were solved as well, which is great. Shout out to Paul from PJRC for getting me a beta Teensy 4.1. I was chatting with him, and we'll do a board def for CircuitPython in a bit soon. It's still kind of in the beta phase where he doesn't want to talk too much about it. But we should see that supported in CircuitPython kind of right as it becomes available, which is neat. Hug report to Warrior of Wire for starting to add native rectangles to display IO, and I believe that it's actually been expanded to more native shapes, which will be really cool and should be better for memory. So thanks to them for taking that on. Thanks to TAC, who does TinyUSB and lots of Arduino stuff for us at Adafruit, for helping fix the SAMD21 USB issue in the lower power PR that I was doing last week. It was really kind of a doozy, and he had a good solution for it, so that was awesome. Thanks to LearnWeaver for starting to do count IO, which basically counts edges of a signal, which is neat. Thanks to Dan primarily for sticking with me on the lower power reviews. I know it went back and forth, and Dan was testing it and finding it wasn't working, so I appreciate the persistence on that side. And then lastly, a huge thank you to Roy Hooper for Pixel Bluff. It's been a long time coming, but the general idea was to, and the general idea is to speed up like both dot stars and NeoPixel manipulation by putting the core bits in C, and that's what became Pixel Buff. It's been a long time coming. It's kind of officially been released. We updated the NeoPixel library last week, and also a hug report related to that for Dunkman 00 for taking that work on and really pushing it to completion and bugging us about it, because they had tried it and really realized how much of a benefit it was for everyone. So I appreciate that they picked it up and finished it. So thanks to those two folks for really making the NeoPixel experience better. And that doesn't necessarily require a CircuitPython update at all, except for those that have the NeoPixel library frozen in. Okay, and now I'm going to go to TG Techie, who's not present due to finals. So TG Techie wrote, hug report to the community for being an awesome place to hang out and learn, and for lowering the bar for all incoming makers. Hug report to Jerry N for reporting out an error. Hug report to Dan H and Summersoft for answering questions about the inner workings of CircuitPython at ungoshly hours of the night. And a retroactive hug to Tanya and Maker Melissa for all their display work. Okay, next up we have notes from V923Z. So hugs, they say hug report to Jeff Epler for his valiant efforts with my PR to the Adafruit learning guide. Hug reports to Hierophect for digging out the Micropython PRs for a discussion on user modules. And hug to 95 Fox, Tanya, and Dan H for suggesting the inclusion of interp method in Microlab. All right, now we're gonna circle back to the top. And let me just double check against here. So Anik, Data, and Anne are lurking. So we'll go to Brent.
Hello. Hug report to Catney for hosting Show and Tell. It was really funny when she got to Roy and like turned around. To Sean Cross Zobs for doing cryptography functions for CircuitPython. It's really useful. A lot of the libraries I've worked on and written use like pure Python implementations, and it's going to be really fast once this is set in CircuitPython, and I can't wait to refactor code. Scott for continued work on low power modes, and for ESP32S2 work, I can't wait for that. And to Jim Bennett at Microsoft for making the CircuitPython Azure IoT library more robust. It's pretty feature complete, and adding helper libraries like parse and HMAC to the community bundle, which we definitely needed. I have a HMAC implementation in a guide, but now we have libraries for that. So thank you.
Great. Awesome. Thanks, Brent. All right, Carter is lurking, so we'll go to Charles. Are you around today, Charles?
Yes, I am. Here I come.
I hear you.
Well, this week I'm still working on that keyboard. I've got no basic function, but I still haven't conquered the. I still have to conquer. I'm still working on conquering that, and I appreciate a bit of help from several people in other parts of the project.
This is Hug Reports.
Oh, I'm in the wrong section. I'm sorry.
No worries.
I missed a general hug report to everybody this week because I really don't have any specifics yet right now.
No worries. Thanks.
Okay,
Thanks, Charles. All right, let's go to Dan.
Okay, so thank you, Catney, for going through all the library issues and deciding what to do with them and following up on them. It's really important and great. Thanks to TAC for fixing that tiny USB issue that Scott mentioned in like in an 8-hour shift, kind of like overnight, which was really great. Mm-hmm. I thought it was going to be really hard, and he fixed it really fast. Thanks to Scott for finishing lower power so that we can merge it in. It's all done. That's great. It's done. It achieved its goals. And thanks to Zobs for the NRF 52833 work and other work related to NRF, which is sort of doing the right thing for the NRF port and making us think about updating the soft device and what the strategies for that are and things like that. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Thanks, Dan. All right, Dave P is lurking and David Gloud is text only, so I'll read those off. David says, hug report to Birdie B for the commander board and the USB power switch 2 on the 8086.net. Hug report to Stargirl in advance for the USB host Feather, and double hug if this can be done with a Feather M0 Express just by cutting a few pins. And lastly, a hug report to Kevin Walters for the Great Clue Sensor Plotter Learn Guide. Next up, we have text from Foamy Guy. 27, 28. Who says, group hug, a belated hug to Deshipu for work on the Pew Pew and microgame RGB color fix, and lastly, a hug report to Jerry N for work on the RFM 9X LoRa library. Geek Guy is text only as well, so I'll read those off after I take a time code. Geek Guy has a hug report for Tan Newt for his work on the lower power and the ESP32S2 stuff. Hug report to Catney for her amazing work behind the scenes. Hug report to Maker Melissa for her work on Blinka, and a hug report to Jerry N for his work on the RFM 69 and the RFM 9X libraries. And now we go to Hierophect.
Okay, so hugs this week to thank you to Mark for his great STM32 PRs this week. To Arturo for his review of my IMX PR, just as I get started on those. And also to Arturo, again, I want to give him a belated thank you for having a chat with me about his experience in creating the Serpente board, which is a tiny custom board on CircuitPython. I've recently been diving down the hole of trying to create my own hardware project with a friend and going about launching that. And he gave us some really great tips, and it was really awesome to hear about his experiences. Thank you, Arturo. His PR reviews, and group hug to everyone for just being a really great, respectful community that can. I saw a lot of really nice discussions this week. And I'm just grateful to be in a community where people can, kind of voice up concerns or have divergent ideas, and that we can still handle that in a really respectful way. And it's just worth reminding that sometimes there are communities that don't do that, and it's really great to be in a community that does. that's it for me.
Sweet. Thanks, Higher Effect. All right, next up we have Jepler.
Well, first of all, I want to hug report Catney for hosting her first show and tell and for inviting me to be on. And a big hug to Crayola. I know that the NeoPixel stuff took a long time. I got an early sample of it a couple of months ago when I just bypassed the NeoPixel library altogether to use the Pixel buff. And, it doubled the speed of my code. And it's great that everybody is going to benefit from that now. Congratulations, Scott, and a big hug for landing the low power patches. That is really exciting. And to higher effect in advance, you heard it here first, maybe. You get to add the other STM microcontrollers to RGB Matrix. I'm happy to help you out through my understanding of the code and through what I've written in CircuitPython. So I'm around. Just please ask. And that's what I've got. Oh, wait, no, I've got two more. There's a page break. Thank you to Zoltan, V923Z. When I wrote the Microlab guide, I missed or overlooked that there was a direct way of computing the standard deviation. And so I said, oh, look, CircuitPython with Microlab is 10 times faster. No, really, it's 40 times faster. So he made a little amendment to the guide code. And then there was this whole odyssey of, first there's Pylint, but then after that, the builds were still failing for no reason. And I had to spend some time on the weekend with just getting the Travis to work. And I wanted to thank him for just doing it in the first place. And I was happy to figure out what was going on with Travis and give it a kick, and happy we could get that in. And finally, group hug. Like Higher Effect says, it's a great community, and it stands in contrast to some of the other ones out there on the internet. And you guys are great.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeff. All right, next up we have Jerry.
Hello, and I think anytime somebody has an opportunity to kick Travis, go for it.
It's no longer Travis, mostly though.
A report to Foamy Guy for his testing of the RFM9 XPR and for going out and getting boards and giving it a thorough run. I appreciate that. And a group hug to the community. Thanks.
Thanks, Jerry. And I should note that Travis is a computer system, not a real person. We're not kicking people here. All right, let's go to Catney.
No, just AIs. So I want to give a hug report to Roy for the epic work that went into Pixel Buff. It started just over 2 years ago at PyCon, and an amazing amount of effort has gone into getting it to this point where we were able to release it. I looked at the days. It's almost, just in a couple weeks, it'll be 2 years to the day. And here we are. Now we have it. Now we have super fast rainbows, which was the whole reason that it started. I want to give a hug report to John Park, Maker Melissa, Jeff Epler, and Roy for dropping by my first show and tell. I didn't expect to have anyone show up and ended up with the 4 of you, and I even had one community member. So things went really well. To hug report to Foamy Guy for taking on whatever comes his way. Every time I'm finding an issue, I think is about at his ability level. I ask if he's up for it, and he always is. So that's always great because there's a lot of things that would probably languish that are now getting done, and that's excellent. And a continued group hug to the community for remaining positive and supportive through everything that's happening and being amazing to all the new folks joining us, as a lot more people have a lot of time. We've seen a huge influx of new members, and everyone is getting an amazing experience, and it's just really great to see. And that's what I have.
Awesome. Thank you, Catney. All right, King or North is lurking, so we'll go to Maker Melissa.
Hello. So I wanted to give a hug to Catney for the show and tell on Thursday, or for hosting it, and a hug to Geek Guy for your dedication to the segmented displays, and a group hug to everyone else.
Awesome. Thanks, Melissa. Okay,
Yeah.
Man Elms 2000 is lurking. Welcome. We'll love to see new folks join in. And speaking of new folks, we have text from Mark Olson, who says, May the 4th be with you. Hug report to Higher Effect for adding this STM32 README and make flash in 2819. And a hug report to Emma Mark's wife for letting him spend all week coding on CircuitPython. All right. Welcome, Mark, as well. Mr. Certainly is lurking, so we'll go to Summersoft.
Hello. May the fourth be with you all. I was in a deep hole of debug all week, so I just have a group hug this week. I was mostly absent.
No worries. Thanks for joining in. Always nice to hear your voice. Next up, we have Stargirl is text only. And she says, hug report to Dan for helping me understand SPY. And the hug report to the USB Hackers Discord for helping me figure out USB host. Awesome. Thank you, Stargirl. And next up, or that is the end of hug reports. Next up, we have another round robin for status updates. This is a chance to talk briefly about what you've been working on and what you plan on working on in the coming week. Again, it's a great way to just get a feel for what is going on across the wide world of CircuitPython. Yep. So I'll start, and then we'll go to Catney because she's got to head out. So for me, first, lower power is checked in. I want to release a beta this week, so more people can try it. I wrote these notes yesterday, and so my notion of this and next were different. We'll likely want to optimize background calls before releasing this as stable because they currently will make performance worse. And then probably starting tomorrow, I've got like email and reviews to do later today, but looking forwards to having an ESP32S2 week. It's only been like the end of the week that I've been able to do stuff because I was always finishing lower power at the start of the week. I have one more linker error that is really confusing. So if anybody's ever seen a warning pthread set cancel state is not implemented and will always fail sort of message, please let me know because I've not actually seen this as a thing from a linker. So I'll start poking at that tomorrow. But basically, once it links, I'll be able to try to run it. I don't expect it to work, but I'll be able to like start making progress on getting it working. On Wednesday, we had the ESP32S2 hack chat. So please tune into that and prep some questions for what you want to see there. I wrote the notes last night and said may take a peek at the 833 to see if I can't spot the USB issue, but it turns out overnight they figured out the USB issue, so I won't actually need to do that. And I plan on streaming Friday again. Basically, I think as I'm doing this ESP32S2 stuff, I'll do Friday streams as kind of a check-in and do some work. So if you want to kind of keep tabs on where the ESP32S2 stuff is, I recommend joining my stream. And Stargirl offers to tweet about this error, and so I think I'll take you up on that after the meeting. And I want to bug Ivan from Espressive as well. He's been super helpful, so I will do that. And okay, let's go to Catney.
Hello. So my status update is relatively short, mostly because I've been doing the same thing for a while. Still continuing the GitHub issue sweep across all the libraries. I've gotten through everything. However, the first time I went through, set some aside that I want to do something with, didn't actually put labels on all of them, and I'm trying to do that. So what I did get done is I fixed a number of issues, closed many of them that are no longer a problem, poked the original authors for input or resolution, and added a few labels. Last week also did the newsletter video. I hosted JP's show and tell on Thursday, and I'm sure there were more things I did, but I don't remember them. So this week I'm going back through the GitHub issue list to add as many labels to the rest of them as possible and catch anything I missed. I already found a couple that can have more done with them than I did, so it's good that I'm cycling back through it. It should be a lot quicker this time, obviously. I need to find or order motor hardware. There's a specific set of things I need for a upcoming project, the content of which I do not know, but it involves motors. So I need to either find what I have somewhere, or if I can't find it, order it again. doing the newsletter video tomorrow. And then on Thursday again, I'm hosting JP's show and tell. Last week was because I needed to get the experience, and since there's already now 3 of them, I thought doing a 4th one would be a bit saturated. So I asked to host JP's, and then he asked if I could do it again this week because he's got a conflict. So last week was for me, this week is for him. I've exhausted my ringers, so if you're interested in stopping by, it's at 5:30 p.m. Eastern on Thursday. Please come by and show something off. Let me know ahead of time and I can get you the link earlier so you can hop in, and hopefully I will find some people. And then possibly some miscellaneous on another list I have. But for the most part, I am tasked with finding my motor stuff and or pinging Lamore to find out what she wants next. So my next up is currently a mystery.
If you do want to look at more issues, we could always use your eyes on the core ones as well.
Okay. Yeah, I'll see what happens with whether or not I can find the stuff or whether I have to order it. Because if I have to order it, I'm a little bit in limbo for a couple days.
Okay.
Otherwise, I think she's got plans. So.
Yeah. And remind me about show and tell, and I'll try to hop in.
Okay, right on. Will do. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thanks, Catney.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Going back down the list, TG Techie is not present. Still has finals. And says, last week, worked on the CircuitPython Not Dumb Watch, stability and error handling. The only, in quotes, issue left is to stop the device from booting into safe mode once the battery dies and is plugged back in. Might use the onboard ATtiny10 to reset on power up, but an all CircuitPython solution would of course be preferred. Performing a cost analysis for ordering multiples of the watch in small batches with PCB assembly. Looks like it might be kind of reasonable if ordering 10 or more at a time. Next week, online finals. Finish the poll for adding timeouts to Adafruit bus device. And looking into FreeRTOS and Zephyr as a backbone for the watch. Much later. Question mark. So if you have thoughts on that, reach out to TG Techie. All right, next up we have notes from V923Z, who says, added the interp method to Microlab. This was a CircuitPython community suggestion again, and thanks for it. As a reminder, if folks who are coming from NumPy have portions of NumPy you'd like to see in Microlab, please reach out to Zoltan. Definitely interested in adding those things. Additionally, Zoltan implemented configurable printing of ND arrays, and have been and am still working on exciting new Microlab feature. Almost done. More on this next week. What a tease. Okay, and I'm gonna scroll up and scroll up here. Anecdata and Ann are lurking, so we'll go to Brent.
Hello. Good luck, TG Techie, on your exams. I actually finished my semester, and I'll be in the weekly meetings instead of listening to this during my walk on Tuesdays. Wrapping up Fona and cellular work for CircuitPython. I'm going to probably have a guide for it. I haven't written it. Probably be out later this week. Last week I spent some extra. It's been working for a while, but I'm spending some extra time making sure that it's reliable. Cellular is a little bit different than even Wi-Fi in that it can drop out pretty frequently, and then establishing the connection really does take a lot of time. So I've been working on increasing how reliably it connects and making sure that it doesn't disconnect while connecting, and all these different things. Like connecting in cellular is like, it could be a bunch of different things. And if you have a phone 808 lying around, I'd appreciate feedback. Right now, it's only working for the 808, which is a GSM 2G module. But I'm making it modular enough to make it work for the Fona 3G as well. And then after the meeting, I've been looking at how PyCom does their cellular Micropython networking stack. And I'm going to refactor this a little bit. Like I was saying, like connect on, like, what are you connecting to? Like, you can connect to the network, you can connect to the carrier, you can connect to like your sockets. So I'm spending a lot of time thinking about how I want to interface with this and how it will be simpler to interface with in the future, while retaining that we can expand it to 3G and then 4G and NB-IoT and all that stuff. And that's about it.
Okay, we should talk about that when you have an idea, because I want to think about that in terms of the Wi-Fi stuff I'll do for S2 as well.
Okay, sure.
Because I'd really like Socket to actually be a strict subset of CPython Socket, so that we can test libraries built on top of it with native Socket in Python.
If you have an example of how you want that to be used, I'll definitely look at it for.
Yeah, basically Adafruit requests should work on native CircuitPython or on native CPython. Like, you should be able to hand it just like a socket implementation from CPython, and it should just work. And yeah.
Okay. Yeah, let me know when you're working on that, and I'll try to sync up.
Well, I think you're gonna do this refactoring before I get to it. So
yeah,
when you have an idea of what you're thinking, let's just talk it over.
Sure.
Cool.
That works.
Thanks, Brent. All right, Carter's looking, so we'll go to Charles.
Okay, now is the time.
Yeah. What you working on?
I got my. I'm now working on implementing Aftertouch in the keyboard. I got it basically functioning as an organ style keyboard, meaning no velocity sensitivity. So I need the velocity sensitivity in it, and it's got a very curious way of doing. The keyboard I use, which is from an old Oxygen 8, uses a very curious way of implementing velocity sensitivity. It has two switches, and it times it between, the time between the two switches closing tells it how much velocity you have. And I may have to resort to going back to Arduino to get that to work. But right now I do have a keyboard that works like an organ, meaning you hit the key, it will sound a note. And I just give it an arbitrary velocity at this point. I think about half, about 50 or 60.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, that's where I am.
Cool.
And by the way, tomorrow is Cinco de Mayo, so happy Cinco de Mayo to everybody. And then see you next week.
Cool. Thanks, Charles. All right, let's go to Dan.
Okay, I'm finishing up Packet Buffer, the stuff that I was doing to try to do the Adafruit services. I had a bunch of issues with Packet Buffer. I think they're all straightened out. I just submitted the PR a few minutes ago, and it says need to fix MIDI issues in the note. I'm going to change that because I think I fixed it. We haven't had download stats since we switched CircuitPython.org from downloading from GitHub to downloading from Amazon S3. We now know how to do that. Scott wrote a program to do it manually, and I've gotten the Adafruit web dev people to set me up on Adafruit AWS. Probably use Adafruit Lambda to run a script once in a while to download the stats and process them. So I just have to write the code, which is mostly done already because Scott wrote it. I've looked at two more BLE devices. One is a body weight scale, that is a bathroom scale, which sends readings, and one is a blood pressure monitor. The bathroom scale, none of these devices use the standard suggested services that the that the Bluetooth committee came up with. They have their own, unfortunately. So either we have to find some reverse engineered or find somebody who's already reverse engineered it. The blood pressure monitor I got, doesn't, all it does is let you retrieve the history of the blood pressure measurements. It's not real time. So that's not so interesting, and we'll probably just give up on that because I can't find a blood pressure meter that does real time. Taking blood pressure is kind of an involved process anyway. It takes like a minute or so. So I can understand why they're not bothering to do real time. So what to do is I'll finish the packet buffer work. One thing that we might want to do is in the lower power branch that Scott did, it now runs background tests more often, and we'll try to see if we can cut that back down to make CircuitPython run faster. And I'll start looking at Bleak, as I've mentioned several weeks in a row, and I'll do the download count processing that I already talked about. Okay.
Cool. Thanks, Dan. All right. Dave P's lurking, and David Glad is text only, so I'll read their notes. David says, using the commander as a mouse wiggling to simulate user activity, and controlling a USB-powered disco light from Bluetooth with a link there to the tweet about it. Jeff is on the case. All right. Thanks, Jeff. Next up, and thank you to David as well. We have notes from Foamy Guy, who says, this week, testing the RFM9X reliable datagram PR, testing the TFT gizmo used in conjunction with I2C based sensors, created a very basic command line messaging system with the new RFM9X library updates, and outside CircuitPython, first time playing Terraria. Ooh, I like Terraria. I think I played that a few years ago. Next up, if we're talking video games, I'm excited for Old World to come out tomorrow. That's going to be cool. Next week, working on finishing up the Tile Game Guide, testing compatibility with the Pew Pew M4 in addition to the PyGamer and the PyBadge, and also adding rotation support in the APDS 9960 gesture sensor library. All right. We have Terraria folks in the audience. I recommend playing video games with other people. It's a great way to get some socializing in, even when we're in different places. Okay, we have text from Geek Guy, so I'll read that off. Geek Guy says, this week, setting up my new UDO Bolt board up so I can run x86 software. It's arriving today. Learning how to build CircuitPython and getting back into working with my Jetson Nano to learn more about machine learning and deep learning. Ooh, there's lots to learn there. All right, next up we have Hierophect.
Okay, so this past week, I've been working on the proper, a little bit of leftover documentation work. So I added a proper README to the STM32 port, and added a new make flash option. The STM32s don't usually ship with UF2 bootloaders because their flash structure kind of makes it cramped between the UF2 bootloader and an internal file system if you need to use one. So we don't tend to use those, but they all come with a DFU, a built-in bootloader that is always accessible. But you have to remember the syntax for it, and now you don't because I put the syntax in to make flash. So makes it a little bit easier to flash new builds onto STM32 boards. I added the OpenMV board to CircuitPython, which is a little bit of an anemic port because the OpenMV is a camera board for the STM32H7. It is extremely powerful. It can the H7 is a very, very beefy chip just by itself, and when you put it together with a camera, this is a microcontroller that can actually run machine learning, deep neural networks on chip. It can, do all sorts of different machine vision algorithms. Like, it's a really cool chip, and I added a port that doesn't support any of that.
Yet.
It just has some pins. So it's kind of boring, but hopefully we will eventually get to do cool stuff like that in CircuitPython, which would be really rad. I added display I/O to the H7, which is a feature I just wanted to go back and revisit because, again, the H7 is a really, really powerful chip. It's got 2 megabytes of built-in RAM. It's got a full megabyte, or a megabyte of built-in RAM. It's got up to 2 megabytes of built-in flash, and it runs at 400 megahertz. So It's fast, it's really big, and that's all great stuff for screens. So now with Display.io on the H7, you can use some of the really, really enormous screen-based development boards, or you can rig up something like the new Toasty board, and have a really, really, really big screen size running at some potentially impressive frame rates. But I still need to go and actually double check on something. So
that's only for SPI-based screens still, right, though?
That's true. That's true. Yes, it's only for SPI so far. So
yeah,
it'd be nice to. I think the processor, and we might want to double check on some of the processor versus SPI speed interactions and see if there's any optimization we made. But in any case, we got base support in.
Yep.
And then I also got started on the IMX PRs. So we have just kind of get my feet wet in there, thanks to Arturo again for reviewing. Yeah, that's just simple, starting out with some one-directional SPI and then going right into this week. I'll also be working on new IMX features for the pins, like resetting pins, claiming pins. These are all kinds of things, little quality of life and module improvement features that I'll be putting in. Other stuff this week, working on the LED matrix code, apparently. I've already been thanked for it and everything, so I guess I better hop on. If I get a Toasty in for the H7, I may add that in, but I'm not sure when that's going to be arriving in the mail because of the Rona. And then I'd still like to revisit the F7 real quick to get the tightly coupled memory support in, just because that shouldn't be very hard, and I've been putting it off for a little too long. So yeah, and then I guess personal stuff. I made a trip into Boston to grab a bunch of breakouts for my upcoming IMX work, but I also grabbed one of my ePaper ones, so I'm going to be working a little bit more on my ePaper flashcards app for language learning and math, and I will hopefully have some updates on that at some point this week. So yeah, that's it for me.
Awesome, thanks, Higher Effect. All right, Jason P was lurking, and now we go to Jepler.
Hello. Last week, the main thing that I did was add support for the RGB matrix library, which I wrote in the notes proto-matter, which is wrong. The RGB matrix library for STM32F4XX, which basically means that STM32 feather. And before I really consider that wrapped up, I just need to check that the NRF and the SAMD51 are still working properly and weren't adversely affected. There was some low-level changes that I made to type definitions, and it should all be fine, but you never know. It's easy to get casts in C wrong. This week, and we'll talk about this down in the weeds, I'm working on a thing called WebLate for making it easier for users to contribute translations of CircuitPython. At some point soon, I'm going to pick up the SD card library in C, moving that to C rather than having it in Python. We hope we'll get speed benefits from it. I have some Microlab PRs that I've been requested to review, and I will get to those soon. And maybe not this week, but soon I am going to get back to the MP3 player project that was all the rage back in January and February. And yeah, that's enough to keep me busy for a couple weeks right there.
Thanks, Jeff. All right, next up we have Jerry.
There's that button. Let's see, where did I go? So finally got the RFM9X stuff released. Nice to get that out of the way and hopefully someday soon work on the next generation. Didn't have a lot of CircuitPython time again this week. Hoping that will improve soon. But I have finally finished my woodshed. Put a picture up, and I just got to put the wood in it. And next week, that's a good part of the project, and hopefully get back to a bunch of CircuitPython stuff.
Awesome, nice job on the woodshed there, Jerry.
Thanks. Exhausting, but fun.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, I can't even imagine. I don't have those skills.
I'm not sure I do either.
You clearly do. You just posted a picture of proof. All right. Thanks, Jerry. King or North. We did Catney already. King or North and Matt Elms are lurking. So we'll go to Maker Melissa.
Hello. Let's see here. Here we go. Last week I finished adding the RockPi S to Blinka. I learned how to set up PWM output for that and got that set up for that board. I created generic analog in and analog out classes for Blinka, although only the analog in has been tested. I created an extended bus library to allow directly specifying an I2C bus number without breaking compatibility. I worked on an external bitbang.io I2C library. We already had the SPI done. And I closed a bunch of Blinka issues. This week I'm going to finish that I2C library. And I need to add a missing pack into function into the Blinka BLEIO. I'm going to start looking into adding Blinka support for the Great Fat One and whatever else comes up.
Awesome. Thanks, Melissa.
Yeah.
I'm curious about the Great Fat One. That'll be cool.
Yeah, well.
All right. We've got notes from Mark here. I'll read those off. Mark says, last week, working on the virtual comport, nearly ready to get the PR reviewed, which I think is out of date because I saw a thing go by that says it is now ready. So I'll take a look at that this afternoon. Joey is a person. I can tell you later. Worked on the ESP32S2 issue, linker issues investigated last week, and tested various things in CircuitPython to familiarize myself with how it works, improving my Python knowledge. Next week, finish the VCP stuff and start on SWD.io, which the goal is to flash a bootloader on one board from another that still works in case people haven't fixed it up. And then also, lastly, looking into adding OpenOCD/GDB makefile targets. So that's from Mark. Mr. Certainly is lurking, so we'll go to Summersoft.
Hello again.
Hello.
So for last week, as I previously mentioned, with Rosie Pi, I've been, as the CI portion is coming back online, once I started being able to test building the firmware triggered by a pull request and then putting that firmware onto a target board, obviously it resets it into bootloader mode, and that's where I've been for the past 2 weeks because it seems that Linux doesn't like our bootloader at times. So basically every time it would reset into bootloader mode, it appears that the enumeration is locking up Linux, certain Linux USB drivers.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I've been for kind of 2 weeks on it, but that was pretty much all last week. And in between all those iterations, I took some time to kind of clean up some of the code, mainly because I was researching if it was either the code that I'd written or some dependencies had changed and been updated and APIs changed. So through that, I just kind of kept cleaning up code and running lets and doing that. So still no definitive answer, but I pinged Dan last night, and I think we may kind of start to work it out. And then for Adabot, last week I started implementing changes that Catney had requested to allow example file names to have an underscore. Basically, it would break the match against the repository name, but we wanted it to be allowable because at times it actually makes it more readable. So I've got 2 approaches working to that. They have slightly different outcomes, so I'm going to submit those as a draft PR today and get everybody's feedback on that. And then, so for this week is finishing up the example file stuff, and then just keep pushing through on the bootloader lockups in Rosie Pi, and then start working on how to work out displaying a web page of test results, since the GitHub check page, at least when you're doing a GitHub app, is really limited. So you lose a lot of fidelity, and you can't put logs or anything because it's all restricted to Markdown, and there's no way to make it user friendly. So I have to, I store all that information, but I just have to start working on having a web page display of it. And that's where I'm at.
Awesome. Thanks, Summersoft. All right. And lastly, we have text notes from Stargirl, who says, eagerly awaiting the assembled boards for Big Hog and Button and Sol from Macrofab, and also working on a Featherwing that acts as a spy-controlled USB host. Cool. Yeah, I'm excited about all of your host work, Stargirl. I'm hoping to get you sucked into adding hosts to CircuitPython. All right. Lastly, we have our In the Weeds section, which is kind of a free-for-all on any questions and topics that we want to talk about. And if you have any topics that you would like to talk about, please make a bullet point under the In the Weeds section, and we'll get to you. We have 4 currently, so you have a bit of time to add something there if you have it. Otherwise, we'll go down this list right now. I'm the first person on the In the Weeds because I thought of it in the last week, so I got there early. But I wanted to pitch the idea that we make it so that CircuitPython builds by default as not CircuitPython, meaning it doesn't actually tell you that it's CircuitPython in the text. It will have an alternate name. It's basically if you followed Firefox's life for a while, they had Debian had it as Iceweasel. I think that's what it was, because they were rebuilding Firefox rather than distributing the version that the actual Firefox people were building themselves. And basically, I want to do a similar thing for CircuitPython so that I'm very picky and protective of the CircuitPython label, to mean that not only is it like committed into our branch version of of CircuitPython, but also that CircuitPython is more valuable than the code itself. Like the brand is super valuable, and like when we teach people that these libraries work with CircuitPython or these guides work with CircuitPython, I want that to mean something. And that will not be the case if people fork and still call their stuff Micropython or CircuitPython. If you look at Micropython, they've had a similar problem. That's primarily what I'm talking about, Summersoft, is that maybe we make the Flash file system not be CircuitPy, but that is a separate question. But basically, by not having it be default, we basically, what I think would happen is we would have an environment variable that factors into the build where we set it for the CI, and then if it's unset, it defaults to something that's not called CircuitPython. Basically making it obvious that like something was built out of the tree, basically. And that also means that, if somebody forks and then they want to build theirs as CircuitPython, they are then also doing something deliberately kind of against the trademark stuff that we have for CircuitPython. So it will make it easier for forks and stuff to not call it CircuitPython by default. So I'd like to do that. In order to do that, I think we should come up with a cool alternative name. I said bonus points for Monty Python references as well. But here's a couple that we've got so far. Voltage eel, electric snake, physical, eeltronics, embedded eel, eels on a PCB, lumberjack, blancmange. Jerry says shrubbery.
I'm curious, like you don't want to call it Python.
Yeah, that's probably wise to not have the Python part.
Well, I just mean it is Python, so I'm.
You think the alternate should be something Python?
I don't know whether it should be or not. Yeah, but I think like you could call it Flying Circus Python or something. But I'm also a little worried that it might be confusing if people. Are you saying like if somebody forked it and built it, it would come up as voltage eel when they put it on their board?
Right.
I think that's going to be really confusing. But I'm trying to decide.
This would also apply to this whole custom modules discussion, where if somebody decided to import a custom module and build with that, is that as soon as you import a custom user module, CircuitPython is no longer used as branding.
Right. Yeah, if you're building it yourself, then it would not be branded as
I think it's important just to specify that's not necessarily just for forks, because not every like system that uses a custom user module is necessarily going to be considered by the fork by the user. It may just be like, oh, I can't just like, I guess, I mean, if we were doing it the Micropython way, you can drag in MicroPython, you could drag in a custom C module into the file system, and it begins to, and it will auto load that. You know, this might not, like if we did it the MicroPython way, or if we somehow made their implementation, you don't even need to build a new build. So
in that case, I'm fine with calling that CircuitPython. That's not currently the case, though.
Okay, all right. Go ahead and check.
Yeah, super duper Python. It could be just like custom Python or something like that.
Could we just do like not CircuitPython?
I worry about everything like it being.
CircuitPython?
I think that might be too clever. People won't notice it. Definitely not CircuitPython, I swear.
But I just mean like if I do builds on my own, which I do all the time, then and if I give somebody a U of 2, then that's, unless I set the environment variable, then even though I would say, yes, I'm working on CircuitPython, it's going to be not CircuitPython.
Right. Honestly, I would just be really explicit. I would recommend just being really explicit and basically just having a whole thing that just says this is a custom build and therefore is no longer, under the CircuitPython umbrella or something like that. It's like, this is,
just have a warning instead.
Yeah, like have like a full warning that just explains the whole situation, where it's just like, custom builds with additions are no longer considered to be under the CircuitPython umbrella, and not have the same guarantee. I don't know if we like.
I mean,
I don't know what the good language is, but like something that's like a full warning.
Like I already added a thing to the README about this. My concern is that there's a lot to benefit from calling something CircuitPython, even if it's not released by us. And that concerns me. And that's going to become more and more true.
Would it only apply to changes if someone's changed the code, or just so if you do a clone of the repo and build it, would it come up with this new name instead?
Yes.
Okay. So anything that's not built officially at Adafruit would have the new name.
Right. I would like it so that, and it basically, the build has to come from our CI.
I mean, I think that maybe just like David G just posted in the chat, like the kind of your whole thing in the README about, while we are happy to see CircuitPython forked and modified, like I would just put that whole thing into the REPL message, like just because I think the most important thing is to communicate to people who are unintentionally doing why CircuitPython is kind of being a protected trademark, right? That it's to set a certain expectation. I think if it's sort of a friendly message that's trying to explain the core concept of why CircuitPython is protected, that's going to be the most friendly way to do it.
So maybe we do both. We don't call it CircuitPython, and we have a like, hey, did you know this is our unofficial name?
Yeah, like Circuit Shrubbery is the unofficial name for custom builds of CircuitPython. And then while we are happy to see CircuitPython work and modified, blah, 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 like something like that.
Yeah.
So you basically mean that if I go in and I actually change the core code, then that would be considered a fork. That'd be considered a fork.
Right.
Correct? Okay. Now then what you're saying, Matt, now it makes sense to me.
One of the main things I'm concerned about with the fork is that it doesn't stay up to date. Right? Like the moment that you're outside of master, you're no longer privy to our release schedule, and that's part of CircuitPython to me. Right? If somebody's reading a guide and it says you must use CircuitPython 5.3 or newer, like we can't make any promises about versions that are derived from but not exactly in our repo.
I mean, I think that there's a lot of easily digestible reasons why this is a good idea that makes sense to people as soon as they hear about them. It's like, hey, we want to make sure that the tutorials work. We want to make sure that anyone using your code understands, what libraries they're able to use. Like all of this stuff is like really, really understandable. And I think if it can just be communicated, then this is going to be a lot less of a problem. I just think it's important for it to have like a warning so it's not mysterious why the names are changed. And so it doesn't just seem like a kind of a corporate tactic. This is really like, it's a user thing. It's like we're trying to keep it easy for users.
All right, yeah.
So also would this name also be temporarily applied to say somebody who is working on a port that is incomplete? That's so that if you hand somebody a port of a port that is not an official port yet, but is going to be, then it's entitled to still use the name CircuitPython, correct?
No, I mean, like if I gave you a test build for the ESP32S2 that I did not have merged in yet, I wouldn't put the CircuitPython branding on it.
No, but I mean, I'm talking about, like, for example, the boot file and the boot loader file and the main file system name. For example, the Metro.
Right. Yeah, so, I think that's something worth thinking about.
It can be. You can have like a temporary name that if somebody sees it, they'll know immediately. Okay, this is a port in progress, it's not yet official port. So that people.
Yeah. I think we only need one other designation. I don't think we need a difference, because if somebody has a fork of CircuitPython they're going to have for a while, they're going to want to establish their own brand.
Yeah. Okay.
So what I'm talking about here is kind of like a temporary default name, just so that the default's no longer CircuitPython.
Yeah. Okay. That way it avoids confusion.
Right. And then so the other way to turn off this error or this notice that Stargirl's talking about would be set your own name for it, right?
I mean, if you're your own whole legitimate fork, well,
right,
it'd be nice to have for that.
Right, and I know one so far. Like I know somebody created Iot Python, which is a fork of CircuitPython. The other thing we could do is CircuitPython compatible. Like that's totally fine. Okay, so I think what I'll do is I'll start an issue with all of this feedback from the chat and from the notes doc, and then we can continue there. It's not super high on my priority list, but I am very, very protective of CircuitPython. So,
well, you should be.
Yeah,
you're the current benevolent dictator, so you should be
taking care of your baby.
Well, I don't think I'm.
You know what I mean.
I'm the leader, but I'm asking everyone here for their feedback. So
absolutely.
Yeah. I'm not just imposing it on you.
No, I didn't mean it that way.
All right.
Just you're the top of the heap. What I was trying to say is you're the top of the heap, currently the top of the heap, and you're at. And I think your style of management, meaning basically the fact that you do ask, is a very important thing. Okay.
All right.
On to the next.
New name Python. Okay, so I like all these ideas coming in, and I will start an issue that'll be the next thing that I do. There are some details to work out about like what does sys return as in terms of implementation and stuff as well. But I think in general the response is, yeah, that sounds like a good idea, but let's make sure that we make it clear what is happening and why it's happening to folks. So we'll make sure and do that. Okay. Next up, let's kick it over to Jeff.
Thanks, Scott. So I've been working on setting up a service called WebLate, which helps people contribute translations of software. And WebLate is this other open source piece of software, and you can self-host it. And I'm just trying to figure out what still needs to be done before we either launch this for real or soft launch it. And so I wanted to talk about that here in the chat. And I'm just going to paste into the chat kind of my own to-do list to show where I'm at. And I had intended to like have a little tour, but I didn't put that together to try and screen share that with you. But basically it's a website. You log in with your GitHub account and then say that you know how to translate it into German. You go to the German translation, you get a message that's not translated yet. You type in the password, you type in a German translation, and you hit a suggest button. And then some GitHub stuff happens, and it will turn into a pull request, and then we can review and merge the pull request. So basically, I think this is all up and running, except everything is related to a personal DigitalOcean account of mine. Everything's related to an authentication key for GitHub on my account. There's a Google Translation that is mine. So I think the main things to do are transfer stuff so that it is in control of Adafruit organization, probably, and then also to make it available under a CircuitPython name. Does anybody else want to have an opinion about that?
I think I think that the authentication and the PR creation is something we could do like this week easily. The DNS, I don't know. I think Lamore might only be the only person that has access to that. So that might be a bit more difficult. And then in terms of you paying for it, just bill Adafruit. Like just for the start here, just pass it through to them.
Right. Yeah, the cost is reasonable, and I definitely will invoice them for it. But yeah, this is like on the order. I don't think it'll be $35 a month.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's pretty low.
Yeah, just whatever it ends up being, just pass to them.
All right.
So yeah, I think those first two bullet points after soft launch we could do. Like we talked about having Adafruit Hans be the character.
Oh, right. I had forgotten that we'd picked a name and everything.
Right, because Hans is a CircuitPython character with an accent. So we assume that he's bilingual.
Yeah. And Dan, if you're still here, you would raise some concerns in that PR about the metadata and creating merge conflicts.
This was way before you were doing your stuff, and I just wanted, we see this problem where sometimes when we do a merge, the only changes are in PO revision date. And I said, well, can we just drop that? So I just tried to drop it and it worked. I took it out of the POT template, and I didn't know whether the tools would put it back or not. Then you passed me a pointer to that issue where the people who were doing this got very upset that somebody would do that.
Yeah,
I think kind of
a fair summary.
unnecessarily so, but because it is redundant. Like if you use any source control system, like we don't put modified dates in any other file. Okay, so it was just kind of like but you're not going to get them to change their mind. So
right.
I don't care that much. It just was to reduce the merge churn. Yeah, that was all. It was just.
I wonder whether. Sorry.
Yeah.
I wonder whether another thing that Hans could do is create pull requests from make translate. So say that that make translate was done on a schedule, created a pull request, then we wouldn't even necessarily check it in the build, so we wouldn't get builds rejected because you needed to make translate. Is that reasonable?
I think what happens, I don't think this problem because you get builds rejected. I think what happens is you do a make translate and some of the files are identical except for PO revision date.
Yeah, and certainly if you make check translate and everything is fine and then commit it. I'm just wondering where
I don't think you need that mechanic that you were talking about, that mechanism that you were talking about.
Well, it would be nice if developers who add a string, maybe I'm wrong about this, if developers who add a string did not have to go through the make translate step themselves, if that could happen automatically as well.
Well, I think it would be if the translations are somewhere else than other than in the tree, but if they still have to be checked into Adafruit CircuitPython, if they still have to be a PR against Adafruit CircuitPython, yeah, if those PRs are done automatically, that's fine. But I don't want to have to wait for this robot to do something.
Well, that's true.
Yeah, I was going to say, your idea, you'd have to basically drop the translate check for each PR and then schedule it outside, whatever, nightly or whatever. And then it's going to have to submit a PR with those changes.
Yeah, I think that's
kind of what I was suggesting, and maybe that's strictly worse than what we have now.
Right. I think it's fine, just the current make translate. Yeah, sometimes you forget. Maybe each person who's submitting a PR, before you submit a PR, you should run check translate. Yeah. But you already do stuff like, that's just something that we need to remember to do. Like we already say like, oh, I made this change. I should probably build it on a few things that might get affected or something, because we often use the PRs because we don't want to bother to build a bunch of stuff locally. So we expect failures. So this is another example of that. So that's all. But yeah, what I was doing was not that important. It just happened to be coincident in time with what you were doing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, in that case, I think we effectively can soft launch this thing. So I had one person who'd reached out to me in a direct message, and I will get back with them, and I will also put the link here if you want to log in and kick the tires. Totally appropriate to private message me or talk about it here on the CircuitPython channel. And I hope that we can increase the level of translation of CircuitPython by having this service.
I missed. I was doing something else. Did you also discuss? I mean, you can discuss with the Adafruit web dev people about whether they want to move it off of DigitalOcean, because we have a large amount. We have a number of VPSs that we run for other purposes, and they may suggest a cheaper way to do that or something.
Right.
So,
yeah. This is just what I default to. And yeah, I don't know anything about what Adafruit prefers.
So why don't you? I would suggest sending an email to I'll tell you the email address to send to.
Okay, that would
privately, be great. It's so that you can consult with those people and just see if they have an idea about what the best way to run this would be.
Great.
Okay.
Two other things I would comment about just translations in general. One, I think I am kicking around this idea of replacing make with the Python plus Ninja stuff that I experimented with. It's not going to happen anytime soon, but potentially one thing we could do is like add a rule that regenerates the PO and POT file automatically, like as part of the build system. It's a little weird to have your outputs back in the build source or in the source directory.
I know.
But it is something we could automate. And then the other thing we could think about doing sooner is actually putting a make merge translate target that automatically, basically the way I merge is I check out the like mainline version of the files and then just rerun make translate.
Yeah, there are a couple of tricks you can use like that, especially when you know that the translations themselves are not updated.
Right.
Or, you haven't been translating into German, then
right.
Yeah, you can just discard the one-side changes or rerun make translate or any of those things. And yeah, documenting that would be good. And I should mention I have a work in progress branch somewhere that is going to at least be a short document introducing here is the web late service. Here's how you contribute your changes. So that will go in as a pull request soon. Yeah, and so I will get in contact with Adafruit's web dev people, and then we'll figure the rest of this stuff out.
All right. Awesome.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
I'm so excited.
Good. Thanks for putting that up. It's a cool tool. All right, Jeff, let's move on to your second one.
My second one, yeah.
We're fully in the
we've been
weeds
talking
here.
We've been talking about wanting to highlight the open source hardware, especially now that Adafruit is doing this work to certify. And I just wondered, on the CircuitPython.org website, like on the downloads page, can we put a logo? Can we put a search, put it as like one of those checkboxes, search for open source certified hardware, just as a way of highlighting that?
Yeah, I think it's a neat idea, and I'd love to hear from Melissa about it, because she does.
Wait, this would highlight boards that we support that are open source certified.
Yeah, I think it would basically be like another designation on each board of like, oh, here's the like certification number, and therefore we get a link and a logo.
That's cool. What does the certification actually like do again?
It makes sure that you have like publicly documented schematics and stuff.
It's basically like vetted open sourceness.
Correct. I mean, the reason the reason the Open Hardware Summit started moving to that is what they were finding with the original gear logo is that one, the gear logo was kind of a shared trademark and they didn't have a lot of access over it. And so they came up with a new trademark that the Open Source Hardware Association could actually defend. And then they made criteria for it. The issue is that people were putting the gear logo even if their stuff wasn't actually open source, right? Like that they weren't actually posting schematics and things for. And so but the Hardware Association couldn't enforce the incorrect use of the gear logo because the gear logo is burdened with all this stuff. So now they have a new logo that they can also enforce.
So this would hypothetically. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
What did you say you wanted to hear from me? I had walked away for a second, so I only caught the tail end of that.
Go ahead.
I was asking, how can we highlight the open source hardware certified boards on CircuitPython.org, like on the downloads page? And I wondered whether we could show a logo like overlaid on the ones that have that, and whether we could have a search, like have it be one of the features that you could search for. So you'd go and you'd turn on features for certified. And obviously that's separate from getting the metadata up to date, which would be a fair bit of work to do 200 plus boards, or 100 plus boards anyway.
We could add it in as like a feature for the boards, and then automatically it would populate under searchable.
And
I
was
gonna say I think there's two ways to do it. One, you could put it in the individual board's template file, or you could put it into the JSON data, but that all comes from the CircuitPython side. Does that sound right, Melissa?
Yeah, I would probably just do it in the individual boards one though. Just because.
So if somebody
more
puts
control.
a line under features, does that put it into that list of checkboxes?
Yes, it does.
Okay, and that's why you have to keep a lid on the number of features that are.
That's exactly right. Because it had gotten to like 60 different features before.
Yeah, I think this one is big enough that it's worth having. I mean, there's going to be how many CircuitPython boards are certified now? It's dozens at least, right?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think we're over 50. I'm trying to figure out this search, but it's not that obvious to me. Like if I search for Adafruit, I get 261 projects.
Mm-hmm. On the open source hardware
Yeah,
certification site.
their database. So it would be nice if we're gonna take the time for the boards, we should actually make sure we include the unique ID for the certification too, because then we can link back to the certification database with it.
If we want to link back, then yeah, that would probably be a completely new feature.
Right, which is what I showed here.
Remember that the 261 board thing certified includes things like feather wings and other things that are not really relevant to directly relevant.
Right. Yeah, I think we would just bolster the big boards page on CircuitPython.org to just highlight the ones that are certified. Because I know, like, for example, Radomir Deshipu always certifies his stuff as well.
Right.
So
I think we should still keep it under the boards so that as we add new boards, we don't have to like edit two different files and stuff.
Right.
Yeah. You put it as another piece of metadata on a given board.
Right.
Exactly.
As you put it up, you ask the question of whoever the board belongs to. Are you certified? And if they say yes, they'll give you a certification number, and then you can connect it to the database.
Right. Okay, so I think the next step is either Melissa or Jeff make an issue on CircuitPython.org repo.
Yes.
Sure. I wonder, is this something we can tap Dylan for to do the with the one by one?
So, yeah. I think just getting them all in, I think Dylan would be a good person for that.
Yeah, he could at least add the metadata, and then we could add the code that displays it later.
Right. And we should also consider just double checking all the other boards as well, so that we don't just mark all of the Adafruit ones, but like take 2 seconds and just Google or like search within the OSHWA database for the other boards as well.
Well, if the boards, each board that's certified has a unique ID, so make that ID part the thing that says this is, make that piece of data as the put that in the metadata slot for OSHWA, and then that won't be issue, because if they're not, there won't be anything in that slot unless it is actually certified, and you can verify that certification is legitimate by using whatever they submit.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'm just suggesting that when we go back and add it for all the boards that are already on CircuitPython.org, let's do a quick glance to see if, like, other boards that are not from Adafruit are also already open source hardware certified.
Okay, I get it. I see what you mean too. So that way we pick up everything, including that which is not Adafruit.
Right.
Okay.
So it wouldn't just give us a head start.
Yeah.
Okay. We're getting real long here, so I just want to. The last topic is from Mark, and Mark has been text only, but just suggests here. Actually, let me take a time code. Mark suggests the issue of is not implemented and will always fail is likely just a cryptic way of saying the library is not included. Yeah, that's what Stack Overflow found for me as well, and I was using NM to dump all of the linker symbols, and I thought I was linking in the thing that supposedly provided it. And then Jeff also pointed out to me earlier that the linker script itself says that it provides that symbol too. So I'm just that's what I found, and I thought that I was satisfying that. But I will keep looking into it tomorrow or later today, depending on how fast email and stuff goes. Okay. Jeff said, did I try trace symbol? No, but I didn't know what that is, and I will add that as a note for myself. That is cool. I'm learning more about linkers, which is great. Okay, I'm going to wrap this up because we're an hour and 45 minutes in. Yeah, Mark, you'll hear from me if I can't figure it out. Thanks for all of your help, for sure. Okay, this has been the CircuitPython Weekly for May 4th, 2020. Thank you to everyone for joining this meeting, and those of you who stuck through till the end. It was definitely an in the weeds day, but that's what it's for. And really thank you for all the feedback on the naming stuff as well. I think that'll allow us to grow even further as a community without like muddying the waters as people build on top of CircuitPython. This meeting has been recorded, so beware of that. If there's something that happened that you don't think should be posted, please let me know immediately, because I'll post it soon after. It gets posted to the Adafruit YouTube, which is youtube.com/Adafruit, and then automatically pushed from there to a bunch of podcast services as audio only. So you can check that out if you want to just kind of subscribe and listen in as it goes. If you don't want to listen to the whole hour and 45 minutes, well, if you're hearing this, you already did. But for future reference, you can check out in the description for the video, there's a link to the notes doc, which has time codes so you can skip around to the stuff that you think is most interesting. Those also get posted to a repository, which is github.com/Adafruit/CircuitPython-weekly-meeting, if I remember right. That has all the notes from the meetings since 2017, and it includes links to the videos for those as well. So check that out. And I believe that we're on our regularly scheduled Mondays at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern on the Adafruit Discord next week. And if you want to join the Discord before then, check out adafru.it/Discord, which is the URL. And the notes doc for next week should go up shortly today as well. And Jeff just says, heads up, in about 3 weeks, we do have a deviation from Mondays, so check the calendar. The calendar is also available from the repo that I just pointed out as well. And I will dump that in the chat for our folks if you want to add it.
Yeah, Memorial Day is the next deviation.
Yeah, cool. Okay. And with that, let's call it a day. Thanks again, everyone, and we'll see you next week.
Okay, see you, Tanu.
Bye, everybody.